In 1940, a man named Captain Witold Pilecki volunteered for the most courageous mission of his life. He was to infiltrate the Auschwitz concentration camp, gather information about conditions inside and organize a resistance cell, perhaps even an uprising. Pilecki's plan was simple. He would get himself arrested, get thrown in Auschwitz and then start gathering and smuggling out intelligence about the place. He presented his plan to infiltrate the camp to his superiors, and they eagerly accepted. Armed with a false identity card, Pilecki joined a protest march against the Nazi regime in Warsaw on the 19th of September. He was swiftly rounded up and detained along with 2,000 other Polish civilians. Nothing could have prepared him for the brutality he found. As he leaped out of a train car with hundreds of other men, women and children, they were beaten with clubs. People were pulled from the group and shot, and anyone who resisted was beaten to death. Those who remained were robbed of their dignity, they were stripped, shaved, assigned a number and prison stripes, then marched out to stand in the first of many roll calls. Thus began 2.5 years of misery, but he was in. Now for the hard part. Over time, Pilecki began building his underground. At first it was just a few men he knew from before. In the end, there were nearly 1,000. They formed a network to steal and distribute food and extra clothing, sabotage Nazi plans, hide injured and sick prisoners, and improve morale with a sense of brotherhood and regular news from the outside world. With his network in place, Pilecki could now begin documenting the day-to-day brutalities of prison life as he watched Auschwitz transform from a prison camp to a death machine. And through it all, Pilecki was always just seconds away from death. During the 2.5 years Pilecki spent at the camp, he was able to smuggle out huge amounts of information to his superiors. The first was sent via prisoner Alexander Wielopolski. In Auschwitz's early days, a few prisoners were able to secure their release if their families paid big enough bribes. Wielopolski was one of those few. Rather than risk smuggling out a paper report, Pilecki had him memorize it. Once free, Wielopolski passed the message on to Pilecki's friends in the resistance. Pilecki never actually knew whether his reports reached the Allies, but he was steadfast in his mission. Pilecki's reports on the conditions in the camp began arriving in October 1940. His first message was blunt: "Bomb Auschwitz. Even if it meant killing everyone inside, himself included, it would be merciful." Conditions were horrifying and the Nazis had to be stopped. The British considered Pilecki's request, but ultimately decided against it. The United States had not yet entered the war, and the British Royal Air Force was down to fewer than 200 planes, all of which lacked radar. It would have stretched the limits of their fuel capacity, and the British had no precedent to take action for humanitarian reasons. Over the next 2 years, Pilecki continued to send messages via risky escapes by his men and notes passed to Polish farmers neighboring the camp. Each message was more dire. The Nazis were conducting disgusting medical experiments on patients in the camp hospital. The Nazis killed thousands of Soviet POWs in a mass execution. The Nazis were testing a way to gas prisoners en masse. The camp was expanding. Huge trainloads of Jews were being gassed and cremated. Hundreds of thousands of men, women and children were being murdered. Pilecki's reports of murder on an industrial scale stunned the resistance in Warsaw, so much so that many struggled to believe what their inside man was telling them. They felt sure that the British would act when Pilecki's descriptions of gas ovens and mass graves and impossible human suffering landed on the desk of Churchill and his cabinet, but no help ever came. Even a request to bomb the train lines that carried the prisoners through the gates of Birkenau was turned down, an act that would have halted the killing, if only temporarily. By spring 1943, it was clear the Allies weren't going to help the prisoners of Auschwitz. Without any outside help, an uprising would never succeed. Increasingly frail and in danger of being found out, Pilecki decided it was time for him to leave. It took months to plan, but he and 2 friends pulled off an incredible escape through the camp bakery in the early hours of April 27th. From there, he sneaked into Warsaw, where he was briefly reunited with his wife and children. Pilecki began working for the resistance again, but the symptoms of what we might now call post-traumatic stress disorder dragged him down. He struggled to connect with his friends and family, and wrote day and night about the horrors he had witnessed. In the summer of 1944, the Soviets were advancing on the German army, pushing them westward and out of Poland. The Polish resistance hoped to kick the Germans out of Warsaw ahead of the Soviets' arrival to re-establish a sovereign state. Pilecki was one of thousands who fought in the Warsaw Uprising. the largest action taken by a European resistance group in World War II. The fighting was intense and casualties were catastrophic. It is estimated that about 16,000 members of the Polish resistance were killed. In addition, between 150 and 200,000 Polish civilians died, mostly from mass executions. In the end, the resistance was crushed and the Soviets took Warsaw anyway. The Soviets would go on to liberate Auschwitz on January 27, 1945. By then, 1.1 million people had been killed there. For a lot of us in the West, we think of May 1945 as the end of the Second World War. But for Poland, the end of the war would just mean they would spend the next 4 decades as a communist puppet state behind the Iron Curtain. But Pilecki didn't see much of it. He remained loyal to the idea of a free Polish republic and continued sending messages to British intelligence. He was arrested by communist authorities in 1947, subjected to brutal torture and sentenced to death in a political show trial. The sentence was carried out on the 25th of May 1948, and Pilecki was executed with a shot to the back of the head in a Warsaw prison. Like thousands of others in Auschwitz, he was brutally murdered and thrown into a mass grave. He was succeeded by his wife and 2 children, but memory of Witold Pilecki was outlawed for many years, and it was only after the fall of communism in 1989 that history was returned to its rightful place. Now he has been showered with posthumous awards and hailed as the hero he was.